It's Joe Mullings from 160 Studios in Delray Beach, and coming from the other coast out at Cutis headquarters in Carlsbad is Jennifer Aile. Jen, good to see you.
Good to see you as well, Joe. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, and how are you?
I can't complain. Everything is going to par.
Awesome. Last time we chatted, I was out your way. I was out in Telluride with a family, and we were on the phone chatting about a few things, in particular the amazing journey that you've been on, coming from sort of caregiver to technology provider now. And I said, you know what, Jen, would you be good enough to hop on a podcast with me and be a Sherpa for those who maybe are sitting in a EP suite or a cath lab, and what was that journey like? So thanks for being so generous.
Yeah, not a problem. My pleasure.
Yeah, and congratulations on Cutis. It's been quite a whirlwind the last 60 days. Tell me what's happened with the company. Let's start there first and set this up. Well, tell me about what's gone on with Cutis over the last 60.
Yeah, definitely. So it's been quite a fast-paced, dynamic environment here. In the beginning of August, we went public on NASDAQ under the ticker AFib. So that required a tremendous amount of work over the last, 6 months or so in terms of drafting the S1 and the test the waters decks along with the roadshow decks. And it was just an absolutely incredible time for our company. A lot of us spent a lot of hard work and hours putting into that, and to see and reap the benefits of it was absolutely amazing. Of course, during this, interesting time of a pandemic, it wasn't your typical going public kind of ceremony, if you will, with going down to Wall Street and, ringing the bell. But we did our best stab at it with a virtual bell ringing with NASDAQ, which was really kind of cool. We had some individuals who live in New York went down for us representing the company in Times Square. So we were able to see them down there. And it's been really great. So, we're full speed ahead with our commercial launch and installing systems and getting really great feedback from physicians and clinicians regarding the Cutis system.
So for a moment there, you sounded like a venture capitalist talking about slide decks and S1s. And where did that young lady go who was in an EP lab as a nurse just not too long ago?
Yeah, it's been quite the journey for me. When I look back at my time in healthcare, I've pretty much held every position in the hospital, starting from being a simple nursing assistant to nurse tech, a critical care nurse, and then specifically an EP nurse practitioner. I hit the point where I wanted to make the change into industry, and that took me to a job here with Cutis. And from that, I'll tell you, I've gained so much experience and knowledge. And a year or two ago, I would have never have guessed I would be in the position I'm in currently, and be involved in the things I've been involved in. For example, drafting of the S1 and these test the water decks and roadshow decks. The knowledge I've gained and the experience that I've had has been tremendous.
And did I see your picture up on the big screen in Times Square when the virtual bell was rung? Is that also on the resume now?
That is on the resume now. It definitely is. NASDAQ was kind enough to display some of the Cutis employees' photos of themselves or their families in Times Square, since we couldn't be in person. So that is definitely out there.
Cool. That's awesome. It's going to be, to me, it'd be a Christmas card. That's a pretty big venue. So that would be my Christmas card. And today, just to put context around it, you're a clinical marketing director at Cutis, right?
That is correct. That is correct.
Yeah. And so I think was it 3 years ago where you decided to make that transition from being in the EP lab to commercial? Is that about what it was?
Yeah, I would say that. I think over the last probably 3 to 4 years, I had really contemplated whether or not I should continue in the field of medicine, practicing at the bedside, being an actual clinician, being a nurse practitioner, or whether to shift gears and to do something different. And I thought about hospital administration, and I also thought about industry, because those are in a way your next steps. You know, you get to this point where I was practicing to the full extent of my scope of practice, yet I was always yearning for something more and longing for something more. And in order to climb that ladder, I needed to stretch out outside of the hospital. Now, for me, I always know I have a very deep-seated passion in electrophysiology and always have. You know, I've gone on record saying, you know, I won't die until we've made a difference in ablation outcomes for patients. And I truly stand by that and mean that. And that's what brought me here today. You know, I quickly realized hospital administration was not the route for me, and that I wanted to continue in a field that I absolutely loved and join a company that was thinking outside of the box, that was challenging current industry standards, and pioneering technology for the future to help patients.
Yeah, and certainly Vince Burgess and Scott Hunnekins are probably the prototypical and evangelical leaders on that transition, and to see that talent and impact that you can bring and then quickly give you a chance to prove yourself and accelerate to such a high-flying role at Cutis, I'm not surprised at that. So when you made that decision to go from the bedside to the technology side, what were the things you thought about, and what were the biggest surprises now that you are on the tech side?
Yeah, so a few of the things I thought about, and when it came to the world of EP, you know, there are kind of two different avenues you could take. One being CRM, which is the world of, you know, pacemakers and defibrillators, and the latter being ablation. And I've always been very interested in the ablation world. You know, current outcomes are not where they need to be. And that was my avenue in terms of going that route. Then when I got to that decision, it was what company to join, where to flourish. And I looked at all of the three larger companies that tend to dominate the electrophysiology space. And I realized, you know, maybe these aren't the best options for me. Maybe I need to go with a little bit smaller company that's thinking a little bit differently, that isn't holding themselves to the same checks and balances that we've always been doing just because. We need to start thinking outside of the box, because what we've currently been doing has not changed outcomes over the last 10 years. So we need a fresh perspective. And that's essentially what brought me to Cutis, and looking at their technology, seeing their innovative behaviors and what they're doing, and signing on with a company like them. Now, of course, in joining this side of the industry, there's a lot of things that were very, very different. You know, as a provider, you know, a lot of these things you're not necessarily privy to, understanding, you know, the intricacies of how a product is developed, how we bring it to market, how we promote it, how we talk about it, the evidence that needs to be in place to be able to speak on it. Everything from the small costs in the beginning to the greater cost of commercializing it. It's definitely been an eye-opener that has been quite refreshing. And you also see how difficult it is sometimes on the side of industry to bring forward innovative technology. And I think that was something that very much surprised me. You know, we have to deal nowadays. This isn't a market where you take it to a physician and the physician says, I like it, let's have it. You know, you have to have buy-in from multiple partners along the go, you know, so you have to have it from the lab staff, the physicians, the hospital administrators. There's a checks and balances everywhere you go, and vetting your product and showing them that it can add value to their institution. It's not as simple as, hey, we have something cool and new. It can definitely benefit you and benefit your patients. Let's give it a try. So a lot more complex.
Yeah, and so on the other side of the bed, when you got a new technology in your hand, you were like, great, thanks. And you had no sense of what went into making that. Now that you've peeked behind the curtain, changes perspective on things, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely. definitely a whole new respect for the entire medtech industry, biotech world, and everything that they do. And it really goes to show why they need the the powerhouse behind them, really pushing it and helping them get these things through hospital systems.
So from a career perspective, you've got to be an incredible tip of the spear for a Cutis and companies like a Cutis. You were on the other side. You know how to move in that room. You know the value prop that maybe the caregiver's looking for. And is that a super valuable sort of asset and body of work experiences you have? Have you seen that pay off quickly?
I think I definitely have. I mean, there's truth to saying if you can talk the talk, you can walk the walk. I mean, knowing and having the background that I have in electrophysiology and providing direct care to patients, recommending ablation, signing patients up for ablation, knowing the steps that go into that, I think my experience over the last 15 years have brought me to where I'm at today to strengthen my ability in the position that I'm in. So when I have discussions with physicians and key opinion leaders across not only the United States, but the globe, I can sit at that table and have those challenging discussions, push the envelope a little bit, get people thinking a little bit differently. And I think that's very much respected by my fellow colleagues, by the physicians, and has strengthened my ability and my role here at Cutis.
So that's on the caregiver side. So one of the dings against the medtech industry on the product development side is the engineers don't quite understand either the cognitive load on the surgeon or the UI/UX experience. Can I bet that you get into that engineering team and in that engineering lab and wreak havoc because you're going to tell them that it doesn't feel this way, it doesn't work that way? Does that ever happen over at Cutis?
That definitely does happen and has happened. Initially, a great example, when I very first joined, I was helping some of our engineers with our patch testing and placing patches on the patient. And we, go in these rooms and we heat up the room almost to be like a sauna to simulate a patient experience of sweating and movement and all these things. And there's certain feedback that I can give them that they might not have because they're not present in a lab every day. The movements around the table, where the sterile field is going to be located, who's passing by who or handing off equipment, how the movement of the table can affect the patches or pulling. Also, when it comes to body habitus, different patients, different body habitus, different way people fit into patches and to all different kinds of medical equipment. So that all factors into it. So I think there's a lot of value that I can provide to our engineering team as well to have some input into even, everything from, like we said, patch development to ergonomic design, how long physicians are standing in the lab, how it feels to be standing there, turning catheters left and right, and ergonomics, things like that.
Mm. So how are you finding your move from, it was Michigan, wasn't it, down to Southern Cal? How was that working out? They're sort of alike.
They're sort of similar.
Yeah,
I mean, the transition has been great. Southern California is a phenomenal spot to be. Being an athlete and being outdoors a lot for me, it was an easy transition, finding something to do relatively quickly, and just getting embedded in a great community, meeting local people that do similar activities. I like to cycle, so I have a great group of women that I cycle with here and men. So it's been really refreshing.
Yeah. And you're being a little humble here. Oh, I'm an athlete. Oh, I cycle. And you knew I was not going to let you get away with just having that as a passing comment. You are a ass kicker triathlete, and I'm not just talking about a weekend warrior. You've somehow associated with a U.S. team. Is that correct?
Yes. So I did qualify for Team USA in the age group division, and I competed in Switzerland actually in 2019. So that was an absolutely incredible experience to have. Of course, wearing the red, white, and blue couldn't have made me more proud. It is tremendous. It's a fun hobby, I suppose, to have.
What are you riding these days on your tri bike?
So I have a Cervelo P2.
That's a girl, only
Yeah,
Cervelo.
yeah.
Yes,
I
P2,
love that bike.
P5,
Great bike.
S5, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We talked about that.
Unfortunately, right now, of course, there aren't many races this season, but next year we'll dust her off and get her back out there
Yeah,
and get back to competing again.
yeah.
So it'll be good.
So Southern Cal, ocean swims instead of lake swims, as you would have up in Michigan. That's a little different, isn't it?
Very different. Very different. I think the natural, as you say, what is it? The wildlife, if you will, in the ocean is a little bit different than a lake too. So I feel I have this total irrational fear of sharks, but I mean, I don't think anything like that's going to be coming out of a freshwater lake. So it's been quite different. It's been quite different.
Yeah.
Salt water versus freshwater. At least I'm a little bit more buoyant, so I can go a little bit quicker.
Yeah. And do you get to wear
But,
wetsuits down there because the water's cold?
Yeah, it's weird. That's been one thing that's quite interesting is the turnover based on the tide. The temperature of the water can shift drastically just overnight.
Yeah.
So that's something I'm not used to. Typically back home, depending on the size of the lake, once it hits a certain temp, it's there for a little while unless you have an enormous amount of rainfall. Here, depending on the tides and winds, you can go from having the ocean being 70 degrees to dropping to 61 overnight. So usually always wearing a wetsuit.
Yeah, that always helps a little bit.
Yeah.
So to the people out there who are thinking about making the move from bedside to tech side, what would be the short list you would give them to think about and what they need to understand that they might miss, but they also might grow into as they make that move?
Yeah, I think the first thing is readiness. So the biggest step is knowing that you're ready to make a move outside of the field that you're currently practicing in. And that can be a big step. For me, knowing that I was leaving clinical medicine to take a job in medtech in a field that I'm extremely passionate about, it seemed somewhat seamless to some people in that you've been doing it for so long that it makes sense to make this transition. But at the same time, it is quite intimidating. Everything was very routine for me before, and you knew it like the back of your hand. And now it's kind of like starting back from ground zero and building again, because it is, despite it being a familiar environment, it's still all new. So I think the first thing is readiness and knowing that you're ready to make a change and entering a field that's going to be different and might be challenging, and you will likely need to roll up your sleeves and prepare for some long days, long nights, and hard work. But as long as you're not afraid of that, it shouldn't be a problem. I would recommend that you pursue something you're passionate about. What's the age-old saying? Something, if you work in a field you're passionate about, you don't work a day in your life, something to that degree. I think to a certain extent, that's very true. I've always been passionate about electrophysiology and electrical heart rhythms. And, working in this field makes it that much more enjoyable, for me at least. So, I hope that other individuals, if they want to make this change, they are prepared to do so, and they're prepared to work hard and just kind of get after it.
And what should they be ready to miss? Because there's got to be a little something you miss. It's not all roses over there.
Definitely. I mean, I think I've been providing direct patient care, for 14, 15 years. And I think that is a component exactly of what I miss. I miss that patient interaction. I miss that one-on-one. For me as a nurse practitioner and previously a nurse, I had a lot of time with my patients. And that's something that I prided myself on, was really getting to know the patient and enhancing the patient experience, being an advocate for them, representing and demonstrating and showing them what's right, what's the avenue they should take based on their personal individualized treatment and disease process, and intervening and helping them because of it. So for me, I think the thing I miss the most is the direct patient care. the way I think of it now is that I am helping, but on the reverse side of things. So, essentially when I made the comment about outcomes and ablation outcomes and having an impact on those, I'm doing it, but I'm doing it on the other side through technology, through innovation, and advancing the field of electrophysiology.
Yeah, and you can do it now, Jen, at scale too, right? So before it was purely an analog relationship, although powerful, it was one patient, one gen. And then now you've got, one gen who's part of a Cutis that can reach thousands or tens of thousands of people around the world, affecting outcomes. So I still think you've got a mad impact on the industry and the world.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I want to continue to do that every day.
Yeah. So listen, I appreciate your time. I know you've got another world to take on. Thank you so much for taking time out today. It's always a blast, and I can't wait to see you again in person.
Great. Thank you for having me, Joe. Look forward to it.
You bet. Thanks again. This has been Joe Mullings from 160 Studios in Delray. Take care.